For this lesson, you'll need 4 colors: titanium white, ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, and process magenta. And then add the paint onto your palette. I just use an old tile that I found. To start, I wet my brush and then I dry it on the towel that I always keep around when painting. This helps to soften the bristles before you start painting. And then we start with the sky. It's pretty easy. Mix a little bit of yellow with some white and add a bit of magenta until you have a light pinkish orange. Then paint half a circle. You can use rough brush strokes when you do this. And then when you're done with that, add white to the same color that you have just mixed. And you're going to paint a smaller circle inside the big one to blend it. And then you add more white to that color and paint the smallest circle. Now we also need to make a darker version of this color, so take more yellow and more magenta and mix it together. And that's a lovely color. Paint it on the sides just below the middle of the canvas. I made too little of this color, so let's just mix some more of that. Something like this. You can see that now it's a bit darker than before. So let's just add that below the color that we have painted here. And then to that color we add more white and then blend it above these colors. And more white and blend it out. I do recommend that you do this relatively quickly, otherwise your paint might dry out and then the blending is a bit more difficult. And then more white and blend it in. You can see that this looks a little bit more orange than we had there, but that's okay, it still looks good. If your brush is creating lines on the canvas, just continue painting over the lines to blend it in. The paint should still be fairly wet, so you should be able to blend it out. We'll start with the mountain now, and I actually think that I'm going to do this with a smaller brush. And now we're going to mix a light purple. So take some of that ultramarine blue and some magenta. Ultramarine and magenta really makes a lovely purple. And then we add a little bit of white to lighten it. This color is very saturated for me, so I also add a small amount of yellow just to desaturate it a bit to make it more muted, so it's not so in your face. Some people like to mix their colors using palette knives, but I don't really do that. I might try that one day in the future. Okay, now we need to draw a triangle with a flat top. So we draw the sides up like a pyramid without the ends meeting. And I actually think this part should be a little bit flatter, like this. And then we can add the rest of the purple here to the bottom. As you're adding these colors, just keep in mind that we will paint over this later, so if it looks a bit irregular, it's fine. Just get all of the paint in there. Now, with a clean brush, for the snowy part, we need a color that's between these two here. We mix this color with a small bit of yellow and magenta and white, right? I didn't wash my brush properly, so there's some purple giving off into the mix, but that's okay because we are making a more purple-ish mix now. So we're going to add in some blue now to make it even a little bit more purple. And for me this looks a little bit too dark, so let's add some more white to lighten it a bit. This is an in-between color and we'll be using this color for the snow. Now snow is white, as we all know, but it doesn't always appear white in photographs, in pictures. In fact, you'll rarely find really white snow in a picture that has interesting lighting, like this one. So we put this lighter color on the left side because that's the side that the light is coming from. Only this side of the mountain is lightened. And we'll be using a different color for the snow on the shadowy side. I tried to apply the paint rather thickly to make sure that the darker purple is covered completely. And the thick brush strokes also gives a bit of texture to the painting. For now, we just want to get the color on there. And it's okay if you can still see a little bit of the bottom purple color showing through the white that we painted. I paint irregular lines going down the mountain sides. Now we need to make the darker purplish color for the shadowy side of the mountain. So I use some of the remaining light snow color and mix in some more blue and magenta. It almost looks like a lavender color. And then we add the right side of the mountain. It makes a bowl at the top here, and then after filling in those lines, I just fill in the color. And then going down is the trailing shapes again, down the slope of the mountain. This is probably the snow going down the cliffs. And now I take an even smaller square brush. And I take some of that snowy color we mixed previously and lighten it even more with the white. And using this color, we just highlight where the light reflects. Here at the top and then going down the slope. You can wait until the bottom layer of paint is dry before you put this on top, but I'm just going to go ahead and apply the paint. Because I'm painting on wet paint, I'm just applying the paint a little bit thicker. I just follow the lines going down and add the lighter color on the left sides of the previous snow color we had. So it's a ridge of snow that's just catching the light from the left. Let's mix a pink now that's just a little bit darker so that we don't only have two colors on this side but more variety. This will also create more dimension and more interest. You can apply this color nice and thick, not going over the lighter areas that you have just painted. And then I lighten this color and add a lighter color again. Let's highlight this ridge dividing the colors as well. I put this lighter color on the parts where the bottom purple is still showing through to get the color nice and opaque. Now we're going to the purple side. There's a little bit of that purple on the right side as well when the ridge on the mountain casts a shadow. Next to most of the lighter highlights that we've added, we can just add some shadowy purple here and there for texture. The purple on this side is pretty homogeneous. We just need to make sure that the color is nice and opaque and the canvas is not showing through. I see now that the color that I mixed is a little bit blue, but that's actually fine. It just gives variety to the painting, I guess, or dimension, with some sort of big word. Now it's time to wash the brush again, and we're going to mix a lot of purple for this bottom part here. Even though we already painted it, there's still some canvas visible and the color isn't completely opaque. And I know it doesn't bother other people that much, but I think this might be one of my pet peeves. I do not like it when canvas is showing through my paint layers. I want everything to be very opaque. So the same as before, we have lots of magenta and blue, and then a little bit of yellow just to tone the color down a notch, and then a bit of white to lighten it a little bit. And now I might have added a bit too much white, so let's darken it up with blue and magenta again. And yeah, we can work with this. And if it's still too light, we can just change it. But it looks fine. So now I'm just adding another layer to make sure that the whole canvas is covered. And then we need to paint in the ridges as well with the thin lines going up. The lines are pretty thin and small at the top, and it should be broken a bit as well. It shouldn't be one continuous line going down, and then as the line is going down, it will be thicker at the bottom. So because the lines are broken up, you can add in small dots and short lines in between to create the rocky texture. And we can use the same color on the light side as well. Some of these dark rocky lines are between the light part of a ridge and the shadow part of the ridge. So you can paint some dark in between those two colors here and there as well. And I noticed that the lines, the dark lines close to the edge, are thinner and more liney. So try to add that in. There we go. This is the mountain. Now we just need to do the misty cloudiness that's happening in the front of the mountain. So take that purple that we just used and just add some of the magenta and some yellow to make it more pinkish. And now blend it onto this bottom part of the mountain. Now we need to blend this color in with the sky we have here on the sides of the mountain. So we take some of the purple and make it lighter and pinker, and then just add it above the dark parts here. And then we add a bit of magenta, a bit more yellow and a bit more white again, and add it on top of that. And we're using the same blending technique pretty much that we used with the sky. So we just make it lighter again with more magenta and yellow and blend it as much as possible. And it doesn't matter if it's not completely blended here, because it's not the focus point and it's such a small bit of the painting, it doesn't really matter that much. And now for the cloudy parts, I take a slightly larger filbert brush. This brush has a rounded tip. So take the previous purple that we used and just lighten it a little bit so that we can add some mistiness to the bottom of the mountain. So we're going to add 2 cloud banks at the bottom here, one that's more behind and one in front. The clouds have a lighter color at the top, almost similar to the color of the sky. So let's go along and mix the sky color again. And then take that color and lightly dab that color where the light hits the clouds. You can just see where I dab the colors and try to copy that, or you can try to make your own clouds. And we do exactly the same for the clouds at the bottom. Now we need to mix a darker color that's a little bit closer to purple, and we add it to the bottom of the light parts, just to add a hint of color. And you don't have to blend this super smooth, it can still be a little bit rough. And then we need to mix a purple to add below the light parts and blend it in. And now a proper dark purple. So when I blend it in, I put the brush on the canvas like this, and then I pull the color towards the cloud, towards the wet paint. And as I go along, I make U shapes to keep the texture kind of variable. And now we blend here at the bottom. Mix a color that's between purple and the sky color. It's a bit darker than I would prefer, but we'll come back to these clouds and add more layers to blend it nicer. And then again, just a nice purple for the bottom. And as you can see, this bottom part will definitely need another layer of paint later. I decided that I want to make the top clouds a little bit more muted so that you would focus more on the mountain itself. So I'm mixing the sky color now, and then I'm just going to add a little bit more blue to it. So let's see if this works. Here's a tip for painting clouds, by the way. If you want its colors, like especially if you're painting sunset clouds or something like that, if you want its colors to pop more, you can paint the cloud shape in with a lighter color first, and then you mix your more saturated color and paint over that when the lighter color is dry. Let's add more blue to that color to make it darker so that we can blend it. And then we add it to the bottoms of the bright parts again. And then we make some dark purple for another layer of this bottom piece. It's really amazing what a second layer of paint can do to a painting. Alright, we're going to do something similar here at the bottom. These highlights can even be a bit darker than the top cloud's highlights. So we mix a pinkish purple color again with a bit of blue and add it over the highlighted clouds. Then we mix a blending color between that color and a darker purple. You can bring this color up quite high because we want the foreground to be a bit darker. With a washed brush, it's time to mix a nice dark purple. I add a smidge of yellow to it again and a little bit of white. And before I start painting the whole area, I just test a little bit of the color in the corner to make sure that it's the right shade. And then I can just go in and cover the whole area. And there you have your finished painting. The last step is to sign it and then you are done. If you struggle to paint clouds, I have an older video going through the process of painting different types of clouds, wispy and fluffy and thick and everything. So definitely go check that out.